y'all, it's Casey with Feed Our Children Now, and I'm sitting here with Kate Truscott. Kate, what do you do on Warped Tour?
I am the sponsorship manager on the tour. One of two sponsorship managers on the tour.
What does that include? Like, what do you do exactly?
Simply put, anything that's not a band on a stage probably falls under my jurisdiction.
So can you take me through a typical day on Warped Tour from when you wake up in the morning all the way to when you go to sleep?
Sure, I can try. They're all different. Nothing is ever consistent. I get up at about 6:30, maybe 7, and go into the office and get set up, and then about 8 o'clock we are on the field, passing out wristbands. Basically, it's our job to make sure that everything gets set up the way it needs to get set up, so that everyone can do their jobs to the best of their ability and in the best possible conditions, and to make sure that they have everything they need to do that, whether that's daily working wristbands or anything at all. We had a lot of wristbands. But also just making sure that the whole festival world gets set up the way it's supposed to, and answering questions, and making sure that the staff has what they need to do, what they need to be doing to do their jobs.
Awesome.
Yes.
And then what, like, during the day?
After that. Here we go. I generally spend most of the days, you know, running around and making sure that everybody is still okay, and just going around and talking to people, making sure that they're doing okay, because it's going to be a hard tour.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that everyone is emotionally and mentally doing okay, because it's, you know, they're long, hot days, and making sure that everyone knows where to get things and how to get water and how to make sure they're getting food and showers, and, you know, are they doing okay on their buses, or, you know, whatever. I spend a lot of time doing that, and then I, you know, go back and do office work, answer emails, back out to the field. It's kind of a mixture of those things. A lot of times we have like the corporate clients come in and meet with them, sit with them, and talk about what's working in their activation and what's not working in their activation, what we can do better next year, things like that.
Yeah.
Sponsor world breaks down at 6:30, and the setup guys really handle that, but we go out there and kind of supervise and make sure that everything goes smoothly, and then after that I break down the office and I hopefully get to take a shower. Most of the time I do. And then kind of just hang out and be available. I've always got my radio on. You know, when nighttime comes around and everyone's having a good time and having a barbecue or partying or whatever, and, you know, somebody has to be responsible, and it's not always me, but I think people do look to me for a certain sense of, like, you know, authority or whatever. So I try to always be available and to help, like, if, you know, something goes wrong or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like the mom of the tour then.
Maybe.
Like a mentor too, a counselor.
I try. It's nice to hear that. Yeah. I got told last night that a lot of people are afraid of me, and I've heard that before, and I don't love that. I don't relish in that at all, but I'm just busy.
I just think people would say that they're afraid of you just because you have such a strong hand and you're ready to go. I don't think you're going to know at all.
I'm going to play.
Yeah.
I don't play around.
No. You want it straightforward and now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Give me an answer. Answer the question. Ask the question. That's the worst.
Not
people dance around the question. You're just like, oh.
Come on, I gotta go somewhere.
I will help you, but I need to know what you need.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in the music industry?
I worked in radio when I was in college. I worked at a radio station in Boulder, and I hated it. Well, let me rephrase. I had a really good time doing it, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. And but I really liked working with the live artists. We did a lot of in-studio stuff at that station. So I decided that I would go. There was a club in the town where I went to college, the Fox Theater in Boulder. I just walked in one day and said, I want to learn how to put on a show. And they were like, well, we can't pay you, but sure. Which I'm sure is, like, looking back on it, was a terrible, it was like insurance risk and, like, terrible idea. And I've actually been to that club recently, and I'm just like, I cannot believe the things I did in this club, like climbing through the rafters to hang lights and whatever. But I did that, and I eventually became a stage manager there, and I learned how to do sound and lights and how to put on a show. And I probably, to this day, I could probably wire a stage if I had to, but that's certainly not well. It's certainly not well, and certainly not fast. But I could probably squeak through if I had to. And then there was this like massive coup. Everyone above me quit at one point, and so I was the production manager there for like a couple months. I had absolutely zero idea what I was doing. Like advancing shows, had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I had to wing it because there was no one else. So I did that for a few months, and then when the Roots came through on a 3-day run at the Fox, and I worked with them that whole time, and they really liked me, so they took me on the road with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and from there I was just primarily doing merch, working for bands for 4 years. I worked with them, and I worked with Chevelle, and I worked with My Chemical Romance, and that's when we came on Warped Tour. We did Warped Tour in 2005, and I was their merch person, and that's how I met Kevin and Lisa and Sarah and all the Warped Tour staff. And they hired me to do a job on that winter Taste of Chaos tour.
Okay.
And did that for a while, and then Lisa hired me to be her office assistant. And then Sarah hired me to be a full-time person in Chicago. And then when we started our country tour, the Chicago office moved to Nashville. And now here we are.
So you're living in Nashville then?
I am in Nashville.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
You like it?
I love it. It's a great town. It's so much fun.
It is.
Yeah.
With Daryl.
Yeah, with Daryl. I hang out with Daryl. Yeah.
That's awesome.
This is not good. Why do you eat that?
What would you recommend to a kid that wants to start touring? Like, what would be step one?
I think you have to learn if you actually like doing it before you. I think a lot of people just like the idea of touring, and like, it is not one big party. And if it is one big party for you, then you should leave, because you are not doing anything. You're probably hurting the process. You know, I didn't tour. I worked at that club for 2 or 3 years before I went on the road, and I knew I wanted to, but, you know, had I not started at that club and learned how to put on a show and the basics of like loading in and loading out, how to do settlements and whatever, I would have been a complete disaster had I gone straight on the road. I think people are afraid to ask questions. And I think, what advice would I give? I mean, start with the basics and learn what you want and learn what you don't want, because that is equally as important.
Yeah.
You know, don't do any job just. It's one thing to work for free when you're young and whatever, but to just for the sake of hanging out, not that cool. Like, you know, you want to make sure that you're always doing a job, whether it's the one you've been hired to do or not. You know, I've had a lot of situations where if I just see something that needs doing, I do it, whether it's my job or somebody else's job or whatever. It has to get done, so go ahead and do it. I'm still dancing around the whole advice thing. I guess advice would be like, I always say listen more than you talk. I talk a lot, but I also try really hard to listen to people. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, but in that same vein, listen when you get the answer. And try to hold on to it. Try to remember it, because, you know, if people are taking the time to talk to you and try to help you, then you should probably try really hard to pay attention.
Yeah, it's probably good advice.
But, you know, start small and don't be afraid to work really hard and keep your mouth shut, but ask questions at the same time. So some really contradictory messages are what I'd like to send out to the youth of America.
You heard it straight from Kate.
I don't know if I have any real, like, concise, super smart advice, but I know that for me, I worked really hard, and I asked a lot of questions, and I was persistent, but there's a fine line between persistent and, like, just punishing to people, and you don't want to do that. Yeah. And just learning how to do things, you know, how to put on a show, how to survive on the road. Because it can be hard.
Yeah.
You know, being away from home, being out in these really hot conditions, and all of that stuff. That's a terrible answer. That was a really long, not at all concise answer.
No, it makes sense totally. I totally get it, because I worked in production too, and you never know what's going to happen.
No,
and you
have
always
to be flexible.
learn something.
And the answer, that's not my job. Wrong answer.
Yeah.
Wrong answer.
You just do it.
When people tell me that, I'm just like, well, okay, great, then I'll go do it. And it's like, no, you shouldn't do it. Well, someone has to do it. And you've made it very clear that you don't intend to, so here we go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
When did you get started on Warped Tour? Like what year?
'05 was my first year when I was doing merch.
And then when did you start with production?
'06. I was an office assistant in '06 and '07, and then since '08 I've been doing sponsorship.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I work for Kevin year round. I'm in the office all the time, getting our sponsorships ready and taking care of our clients and all that stuff. I love it.
When do you guys start picking the sponsors for the next year?
We're already in the process. We take a lot of meetings out here that are, people that couldn't necessarily make things work for this year, but they want to come out and see the show and get ideas. So we'll sit with them and talk about things that could be possible for next year. A lot of our clients, will come back next year, so that's sort of just the process of renewing and all that stuff. But we do it all the time. Like when tour ends, we all get a few weeks off.
Yeah.
We get a few weeks off. We kind of scatter to the ends of the earth, and no one talks to each other. We just take a vacation because we've been, on top of each other working for 8 weeks. Excuse me. And then we'll go back to the office in September, and we'll do rap reports from the summer, and then we will really get busy on 2013. Kevin will be done with the routing for next year by this year.
Really? By the end of the tour?
He'll have it basically done, and nothing's finalized until it's announced. But yeah.
What about the bands?
He starts doing that in like October, but even now, he's listening to things, and he always says that he walks around the crowd and looks at the T-shirts that everyone's wearing, and the T-shirts that everyone's wearing now are the bands that that they want to see next year.
Is it that if you play on the main stage, you can't play on the main stage the next year?
There's no rules about that. Like,
okay.
It's just, he tries really hard to build a strong package, and nobody wants to see the same thing over and over again. But that's not like a rule.
Yeah, because I've always heard that. And I was like,
yeah, no, there's not. I don't think he has any sort of policies about things like that. But
who is your favorite band on the tour this year?
This year, that's hard. Dead Sarah is wonderful. Dead Sarah is very good. Every Time I Die, Bless the Fall. I like Yellow Card a lot, and I just gave like a total polar opposites. All Time Low is a lot of fun. There's a good time.
Yeah.
That's 4 Year Strong.
What about on the smaller stages? Have you been surprised by anyone?
I watched Maud's Son the other day, and I was really surprised because that's not usually my thing. Like hip hop and none of that stuff is usually up my alley. But it was really good, and his crowd was awesome, and
he's so positive.
Yeah.
You can't. The smiliest guy I've ever met in my entire life.
Like his face must hurt all the time from smiling.
I know, it's so awesome how positive he is.
Sorry. It's okay. That one, and Polar Bear Club's great. Make Do and Bend, Fireworks. They're all doing really well.
I personally think that this year the package is
perfect.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
It's like all of the bands that I grew up listening to, and plus new bands that I didn't even know, and I love now.
Yeah.
So it's so cool. Mm-hmm. I hope I get to come back next year and do it again.
We'll see.
Well, I guess that's it.
I
think so.
Excellent.
And everyone say goodbye to Kate, and we'll see you on Warped Tour.